on-farm trials. So a lot of things that AgLaunch is doing to really make a difference and bring agriculture here today. We're excited about this innovation challenge because, as I started a moment ago, over the last few years we've had different ways to showcase it, but we thought this year might be a great way to showcase some of the actual founders of Black-owned businesses. These all happen to be in new early stage startup. I think that's fair to say, right? Maybe Danielle's a little more down the line on her progress. But we'll get to that in just a moment. I'd first like to introduce our farmers who are involved with AgLaunch and who will be our judges today. And so I don't know if each of you would mind standing up and giving a wave, but these folks have been really helpful to us as an organization to help broaden the impact of innovation. I'll tell you right now that a couple of them are doing some heavy lifting in some of the regenerative work and transitioning to organic and just trialing new technologies is not always easy. So I'd really appreciate it if you would join me in welcoming these folks and thanking them for their service here, because they've got the tough task of picking the winners today. The Innovation Challenge as it's set up is not really a contest. We really do want to showcase these teams, but we also wanted to recognize those who maybe really stood out in the eyes of our farmer judges today. So there will be a couple of prizes at the end. So let's start with introductions. Christy Bland, you mind standing up and waving? You all may know Christy. She's been an excellent part of our network, has certainly enriched some of the work that's been done there and helping really expand the vision, right? And thank you so much for that. Keith Fight. Keith is also, oh my goodness, Keith was on stage last year, I think, Keith, in a panel, and I heard you just kind of groan about that regenerative ag plot that you were doing. And so he has stuck it out. He's working it through with AgLaunch. We appreciate that so much. And Mr. Ronald Button, we really appreciate him making the trip and being a part of this as well. So these are our farmer judges. They're going to be looking, they've got a score sheet actually, and they're going to be looking at things about, like, does the entrepreneur understand their target market? Do they know the problem? Is their solution a good fit? What about the people that they have and the strategy? They'll be looking at things like that to determine who the winners might be today. You know, ag tech innovation doesn't get anywhere without some investment. And so we're also really happy to have Karen Levert with us today. Karen is on our board at AgLaunch, so another person that helps keep us, I like to think of it like a bowling alley where you got those little rails to keep you out of the gutter. That's the way I bowl anyway. And Karen's an awesome advisor and board member to help us honor our vision and keep on track. But I asked her to share just a couple of minutes about her role as an investor, and again, it's not often that you see a Black woman leading investment in agriculture, ag tech. So, Karen, would you mind coming up and just giving a few thoughts about that? And yeah,
I may just stay here until I stole AJ's mic. So I'm up here again, so I had the good opportunity to say a few words before, but I definitely, and to you student founders, I guess I should call you, good luck today. AgLaunch is one of the few organizations, so Margaret mentioned on the investment side, usually you have technology companies that feel like they're going to help fix you or fix your problem without really understanding your problem. And I think the best thing about AgLaunch is the fact that they're involving growers in to help really know and understand and give feedback to what problems are. And there's not a better organization that does that. Margaret really runs the accelerator, which the companies, if you get an opportunity to go through that, you're going to be a better company in the end, and they also have investors around them. So anyway, that's all I'll say, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the great companies. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. So this is kind of the tip of the iceberg for the vision of what we would like to have here in the future. So Jade Clark, who is our Director of Talent Development, is working hard to increase interest in students faculty from the kindergarten level all the way up through the college level. And introducing people to the idea of agriculture as a potential career today. And so one of the things that came out of that was the HBCU Innovation Challenge. And you know, you can imagine how tough it is to get on a college kid's agenda. They're so busy. So we're just getting started with that program, but we've got some educators here that are going to share a little bit about their companies. And next year we envision we'll even have students as well, and we're super excited about the future of that program. So today we've got 4 founders who are here with us. And we'll start with number 1 on my list anyway. It'll be up for the farmers to decide whether you're number 1 or not, Donald, at the end, right? Yeah. So Dr. Donald White is here with the Center for Sustainable Chemical Innovations. And he rattled off a lot of stuff, y'all. He's a polymer chemist, a nanoscientist, and a professor from Texas Southern. So his company has multiple ag technologies, and he's picked out a couple to share with us today, I believe. So we're going to give him the floor, and join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
No!
All right. So, thank you for that introduction. I'm Dr. Donald White. I'll be talking to you all about some of the technologies we have in our lab at Texas Southern. So, I wanted to just say that we are actually housed as a company in Texas Southern. So, we're the first of its kind at an HBCU. And so I'll be talking about some of the patents and the intellectual property that we have. And I'll be kind of running through it and what that actually means to farmers. So let's see, without further ado. And there's just a little quote, today's science fiction is tomorrow's technology, is something that I like to tell the kids that I teach science on Saturdays with the high schools. Okay, so social impact. You take a ketchup bottle, it's made out of plastic, right? You drop it off your table and it doesn't break. Good, you save the ketchup. Right? You take that same bottle and put it in a landfill, and now it has environmental impact. So now, what does that actually mean for us as a whole? So plastic production, since actually the first piece of plastic was actually produced in 1950, but plastic production has gone up exponentially since then, right? And how we actually view plastic and how we use it, from the carpet to our clothes to parts of our cars, everything, it has become a part of our everyday use, right? So that plastic production has gone up exponentially, 20x since, I think it was 1960. So a little quick life cycle analysis. Here we have the inception of the plastic is synthesized, right? And then from there it goes to use. It's either sold or used as some product. And then there is an abrasion or washing portion. If it's a textile, so clothing, carpet, it will end up in the water. If it is actual, like you see right here in this landfill, it'll end up in a landfill to break down. So plastic typically takes about 1,000 years to begin the biodegradation process, right? So it's safe to say that almost all of the plastics ever synthesized are still in existence to this day. And this is one of the impacts. So what makes them nice for us also makes them appealing to animals as well. Here you have a sea turtle, looks like a jellyfish. He thinks it's a jellyfish, it's really a plastic bag. He eats it, and it causes digestion issues. Ultimately, he dies. Here you also have, I think that's an albatross, if I'm not mistaken. And they think it's some kind of fish or something like that, and it dies because plastic has no nutritional value, right? Here you have some kids over in a third world country. I believe this is in South Africa, and a lot of our plastic waste goes on barges and shipped to these third world countries for them to deal with it. And so they mitigate it there. So there is also a social environmental impact to what's actually going on. So here you have these kids, they probably live, not too far from this landfill, and they're trying to salvage as much as they can. You see fires in the background, there's inhalation of toxic chemicals, etc. So what does that mean for farmers, right? Farmers also equally produce a lot of what we call ag waste, which is the cellular material that's left over from your grow. It's also the material that's left over from that's not actually eaten, right? So here we have all of this food waste that goes into landfills, and according to the USDA, this was a study that was done in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, 103 billion tons of ag waste are produced on average every year. So what does that mean? So this is a study done by the EPA. So we have greenhouse emissions. We have the amount of fertilizer that it actually takes, right? So you have what we call pesticide runoff, right? That also finds itself in the waterways. You have these water-soluble organic compounds that you can't filter out, and they essentially make their way into your home, right? And so we spend a lot of energy, a lot of time, and what we're finding is that this is equivalent to the oil and gas industry also producing these greenhouse gases. Okay, so how do we merge the two industries? Agriculture, plastic production, taking it to ag waste, plastic waste. So biodegradable plastics, most plastics find themselves in landfills or waterways, right? And what we have been able to do is incorporate the cellular material from the plant and actually incorporate it into the polymer itself. So there is a global production of biocomposites, right? Right now, people are already kind of doing this, but the problem is that the plastics that they make aren't very strong, and they're not thermally stable, and so the plastics don't get the usage that the normal the non-biodegradable plastics do. So our technology incorporates cellulose, which is a sugar inside of the plants that give it its dexterity, right? So the advantages is abundant, it's biodegradable, it has really good strength, it's actually stronger than steel, right? And it's renewable. Some of the disadvantages is hydrophilic, so that just basically means that it will actually take the water into its matrix, and then that makes it hard to work with, right? So that causes adhesion issues and increased moisture absorption and material failure, so bad plastic. So what we've been able to do is take through acid digestion, pull out the cellulose from different biomass sources, peanuts, hemp stalk, you name it, cotton. And each different crop has a different amount of cellulose in it. We can now extract that cellulose, and we make nanomaterial out of it, nanocellulose, so really small, to the 1 billion. We then take that and freeze dry it. And then we use our patented method and suspend that into an organic solvent and solvent cast our polymer to make new plastic. So what I have in my hand there is high impact polystyrene. You see that in laptop casings and helmets that you see at a construction site. Non-biodegradable, right? So what we see here is that it's more thermally stable, and the mechanical strength actually goes up as well. Missing some slides. I'm actually missing some slides from mine. But so what I wanted to talk about was our different components. So we make these new products, and at the end of life of these products, they begin to biodegrade after about 20 days, right? So you take your waste, what you would normally discard, and you would take the waste from the oil industry, right? The polymer industry, and you will put those two things together to form a new product. So what we are pitching is a way for you to rethink how you actually use your waste. Now we have other technologies as well. We have a relationship with Petco, and so we're coming up with different ways to test for different types of feeds for animals, and to deliver pesticides without pesticide runoff. We have a technology as well with that. But right now we're working with 3 patents, and so that's pretty much our pitch. Did anyone have any questions? Sure.
I commend you.
What was that?
I said I commend you.
Oh, thank you.
Here's my question, preceded by statements first.
Sure.
I think as black farmers wanting to capitalize on the growing opportunities with hemp, one of the things that we've been really exploring, and we do have a MOU partnership with Texas Southern. I'm not sure if you know Dr. Good, but
I do.
that whole nano aspect is one thing that we were really pushing with our farmers who've been over 2 years, and having access to the type of research that you're promoting so that we can take a portion of the industry and move forward with some very innovative regenerative type practices. So my question is that let's say we've got a farmer who has tons of biomass.
Right.
Okay, our thing is, you've got to have, in order to take things to market, you have to have the testing behind it. So if we got farmers that have tons of biomass, what could you possibly do to help us get the testing of various different products? Like, we were thinking a lot of nano projects, because we've got a couple farmer members' children who are really big into this whole technology, and it just blew my mind when they were talking about it. But we've got the biomass, and we don't have an institution that has partnered with us that's doing the technology. So what could you do to help our farmers engage in this process to get some R&D done?
Right. So that's a wonderful question. Thank you for it. So we actually already have been doing different types of analysis, right? So on a nano scale, we actually do. So I'm a nanoscientist. I'm a product of a center from National Science Foundation that paid for my PhD. Right? So all of the chemical innovations that I've done has been in the nanospace. So I know how to synthesize top up, bottom up, top down. You know, we have a full diagnostic lab. So Dr. Sonia Good, I know her well. I was just actually with her a couple of days ago. And so we're already kind of geared for diagnostic testing and synthesis of any type of biomass material that you have. I mean, you know, we can collect samples. We don't really need much. I know you produce a lot, right? But we don't really need much to run the analysis. And, you know, with my expertise, we could sit down and really just talk about what types of analysis would be good for each individual farmer. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think that, you know, some farms will be better for different types of analysis and programs. Sure.
I'm just trying to understand the final product.
Sure.
At the end of the day,
Sure.
or you, like that cup that's sitting there on the
Yes,
table
ma'am.
right now. Hopefully at some point you could replace that plastic cup with this new
Totally could.
concept.
Yes, ma'am. Totally could.
That's-
I've already made maybe 2 or 3 dozen different types of plastics, polymer blends, so plastic blends where you mix different ones. And we got all different types of properties. We partnered with Johns Hopkins. We did, you know, a triple blind study, excuse me, where we got the data, you know, that our stuff is actually biodegrading. The patents are out there if you guys want to read it. I'm willing to sit with any one of you and talk about the tech. So, yeah, definitely, we can replace any plastic, anyone. I'm sorry, it was.
Go ahead, that's
Okay,
the judge, you
sure.
gotta answer the judge, so.
You indicated that the last product would begin to decompose.
Decompose.
Yeah, decompose within, how many,
It starts about 20 days.
and how long, what's the final?
The final to 0. So I think that I'm not really sure, because We have things that are actually biodigesting right now that's been taking about a year, right? But the fact that the biodegradation process has already started, right, I think is the big caveat there. I had some data that suggested that. I think the slide maybe when I emailed lost in transit, but I'd be willing to show it to you. I have it on my computer, but for sure. Do you have a question?
I guess my question is just like, how does the farmer be involved in this? Like, what does that look like for the farmer?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the question for everyone is, how does the farmer actually get involved in this, right? So 2 ways. The first is identifying certain types of cash crops, right? Which ones yield more cellulose, right? So cotton is better than corn husk, you know, corn is better than peanuts, you know? So maybe we can kind of push them towards a certain field where they can get money off the actual product and then even more money off the waste. And then set up these quote unquote processing facilities at the farm where you actually dehydrate some of that waste so that it's ready for us to take it and just extract. You know, yep. So there's multiple ways that, you know, we can kind of hand in glove what we do.
And I'm sure there's areas where there's more processing plants than.
Yes. So the really unique thing is that I think a lot of this bio-waste finds itself in landfills, like most of it. And so it produces methane gases, which is a greenhouse gas, CO2, amongst other things. And so that's kind of like what the industry has been known to do. That's kind of what the industry has been known to do. But I want the farmers, it's my goal to get them to think about what they're actually producing on the waste side as also being a cash crop, right? The waste is a cash crop as well. We just gotta repurpose the thought process.
All right, let's join in giving him a hand. So
Arm, 1 second. Y'all, let's hold our questions until after everyone's made their presentation so we can end on time, okay? Because it would be unfair for one person to answer more questions than the rest of the panelists. So if we could just retain our questions, and I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, AJ. He told me when I first met him a minute ago, he said, I'm responsible for being on time, making sure people get the breaks, and I'm like, thank you for being here. All right, so appreciate that. I do know that there are lots of questions and that we could probably ask Donald things all day. He just passed the first test of being an entrepreneur because often your slides don't work or something's not working right. You still got to be able to talk it through, and good job on that, so thank you. I want to introduce our next entrepreneur, and Bartholomew Jones is with Coffee Black. He has been a teacher in his past life, 10 years teaching English. I believe he said in Memphis and Chicago, is that right? Yeah. Yep. And he had this unique vision with his wife and their family to really link coffee and how that links back to the community. And he's been on this pathway to do that. He's just recently sold a script to HBO Max that is based on the work that they're doing to that community link to coffee. So I'm really excited to hear from Bartholomew. Would you join me in welcoming him to the stage?
Just real quick, how does
Yep.
green button? Okay, that makes sense. How y'all doing today? That's all right, man. My name is Bartholomew. I'm an educator. I'm an MC. I'm a coffee nerd. I'm one half of Coffee Black. The other half is in the back of the room. That's my wife. She's our coffee roaster. As well as the boys who are, the young baristas. I was an English teacher for a long time, so I talk a lot. My daddy's a pastor, so I talk a lot. So I'm gonna set a timer for myself. Y'all hold me accountable to that. So our company is called Coffee Black. We're a social enterprise, and essentially what that means is our company exists at this intersection of culture and crop. And so our goal is to reimagine what coffee can look like in the future. Many people don't know that coffee was discovered in Ethiopia in 850 BC, and that the crop of coffee only grows indigenously in the continent of Africa. There are 125 different species. The one we're most familiar with is Cafe Arabica. There are two others that I think are particularly important that we'll come back to later, but coffee is a $460 billion industry, and according to the president of Uganda, less than 1% of that goes back to African countries. I believe if you were to include African Americans and Afro-Latinos and folks in the Caribbean, that number would not go much higher, right? And even in our communities today, African Americans are experiencing kind of a neo-colonial experience with coffee due to gentrification. And so we're still being displaced due to this crop that was discovered by many of our ancestors. So to solve that problem, to kind of create a connection for coffee, we're developing an all-black supply chain. So that means trying to create a group of farmers, baristas, exporters, importers, Q graders, and rappers. Now you may be asking me why in the world would you need to include rappers in your supply chain? What purpose does it have? Well, rappers today are the modern griot. So in West Africa, there's a history of storytelling and cultural preservation through the griot. Today, our culture, for the most part as African American, is preserved through our arts. And one of the most recent artistic innovations of our community has been hip hop. And so what I've found as we've traveled throughout Africa, we've been to Ethiopia twice, we've been to Rwanda. In a couple weeks, I'm headed out to Ghana to learn more about West African coffee. And some of the varieties that grow in Africa are Cafe Canifera, and specifically West Africa are Cafe Canifera and Stanifera. Sounds like I'm saying, Sesame Street names a little bit here, so Snuffleupagus, you know what I mean? But those varietals are not explored much, but there is some research being done by France and China. And if you know the history of Africa, when France and China begin to do research in Africa, oftentimes it does not benefit the Africans there. So I'm curious to see how our company can connect and begin to integrate some of those crops and those communities into our supply chain. So what's my background, right? I started out as a rapper. Well, first I started off as a junior deacon. Hey man, that was my first introduction into coffee. That first introduction for me was like becoming a junior deacon. The coolest thing about it was that I got to get coffee while service was going on. And so I used to go take my little styrofoam cup, fill it up with a lot of that powdery creamer and sugar, a little bit of coffee, and make what I used to call a Trappuccino, you know what I mean? And so that space led me into wanting to impact my community. Even as I did music, I knew I wanted to do something positive. My mama wasn't gonna let me get away with too much that was similar to some of the hip hop we see today. And so that led me to creating music, and that led me to connecting with the youth, right? And as I connected with the youth, I began to realize one thing we had in common was this love for hip hop. And so as I was able to take my skills and implement them with the youth, I realized like, man, this is almost like I'm teaching them. And so I went to school for an education degree, taught for 10 years, and at every school I taught, I had a little hip hop club I would do, and I would make coffee. I'm what I call a coffee nerd, right? So I would have all this technology here. It looks like I'm cooking up crack or something. I have a scale, I have a beaker, I got a kettle, we're measuring the temperature, and my students would be like, "Ooh, what you doing?" And I would say, "Man, I'm making coffee." And it led me to kind of share that coffee with them, and it's surprising because many people don't know coffee is a fruit. Right? It's not a bean. My grandmother was a farmer in Alabama. I used to have to hold peas, right? And I know that peas come in pods. I'm not a farmer, but I do know that coffee does not come in pods. It's a fruit. It's the seed of that fruit. And so as I began to share that with them, I had an aha moment that when we were in this context where they were hearing music that they were familiar with, and when they were beginning to engage with it and had space to be themselves, they actually enjoyed coffee. And the curious thing is that as we traveled throughout Africa, we realized that many of the youth there had a similar experience with coffee. People are walking off of coffee farms in Kenya and throughout the rest of the diaspora as well. And so we realized that through innovative products and through storytelling, we could create a world where these youth wanted to re-enter into this crop that is historically a part of their culture. So we do coffee, we do music, we created a documentary, we do apparel. We recently created a pair of shoes to fund what we're calling the Barista Exchange Program to connect youth from across the diaspora through coffee. And we've been able to generate a good amount of revenue through these products. I'm gonna skip through here just a little bit. The last year, we were able to get $220,000 worth of revenue. This year, we're set to hit $350,000 of revenue. And this is all bootstrapped, right? Through the skills of my grandparents and my ancestors. We just know how to make something out of nothing. My daddy called it Afro engineering. But we're looking this year to begin raising, yeah, there's some other terms for that aren't as positive, but yeah, we're looking to really begin to raise capital to start to grow our program in some ways that are significant. So I want to come back here. There are 3 programs I want to let y'all know about. The first thing is the Barista Exchange Program. I mentioned that. We want to raise awareness through the sale of 1,000 pairs of sneakers designed by a Black designer to bring 4 young African enthusiasts from the motherland here to see how African Americans have contextualized coffee into our culture. And then we want to bring 4 African Americans to the motherland to learn about the roots and the origin of coffee. And as I explored my time in coffee, I realized that a lot of the problems that these farmers had were similar to the problems of my great-great-grandfather, Alexander Henderson, who avoided sharecropping in Arkansas. And that many of the systems that were being used to oppress him that he tried to avoid were very similar to the stories of these farmers that I was hearing as we traveled throughout the motherland. And I just want to point out 2 people before I end my time here today. One person is a brother named Hassan. Can y'all say Hassan? Hassan is a driver on a farm from a brother named Mansour Abahika. And if you look at the documentary, it was just released on YouTube. We can talk afterwards. I'd love to get you a link. We got to interview him about coffee. We were actually interviewing the farmer himself, and this brother pulled me off to the side and said, "Hey man, I just want to let you know, I'm so glad you're here. You're the first African American that's ever visited our farm." Right? And he said, "I saw what they did to you all." And I was like, what do you mean? He said, "I saw that brother, what's his name? George," and we're going through translators, but he mentioned George Floyd. And he said, "I saw the disrespect that he experienced as an African American, and as coffee farmers here in the motherland, we experience that same disrespect. When people come to our farms, they don't want to sleep in the same cities where we live. They won't touch us. They won't eat food with us. They fly in from the capital city, take some pictures for marketing and leave." And he said, "Man, if I had a choice," this is not in the documentary because the other farmer we were with didn't want us to put this out there, but I'm just telling you, my Ethiopian auntie told me the real translation. She said, if we had a choice, we would rather sell to you. But y'all don't come. You never visit our farms. You all don't visit our towns or even the country itself. And like many African Americans, this was my first time in the motherland. And as he told me this story and I saw the conditions, I saw the tin roofs on the houses, it took me back to my grandmother. It took me back to her home in Calcis, Alabama. And it made me realize that maybe there's a world where the history of the cash crops that my ancestors were forced to grow, and these cash crops that these brothers and sisters on the motherland are still being forced to grow, could come together. And maybe the art forms and the creative solutions that we've created as African Americans to try to empower ourselves and feel some dignity with our history could also do the same for our brothers and sisters in the motherland. So the last thing I want to let y'all know is that the brother on the right, right there, his name is Gael. Can y'all say Gael? And actually, he told me something interesting. He said, "I'm mentoring a group of young African farmers who maybe don't want to go into coffee. They're not sure." This brother is 25. And he said, in order to inspire them, I took them to a country where there's a strong coffee culture. Oh, that's beautiful, man. You're right next to Ethiopia. This was in Rwanda this summer while we were screening the documentary. You're really close to Ethiopia, the birthplace of coffee. How was Ethiopia? He said, "Oh, we didn't go to Ethiopia." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm a teacher. I'm thinking back. If I got a group of young African Americans who don't want to do something because they think it's not culturally congruent, I'm going to show them somebody who looks like them." So I'm like, "Okay, did you go to Sudan? Did you go to Eritrea? Did you go to Somalia? Did you go to Djibouti?" He's like, "No, we went to Italy." He went to Italy. And, it made me realize that in order to create the world where these youth can see themselves, it's going to require all of us to kind of have a collaborative thought process, kind of like a cookout. We all got to bring something to the table. And I know that as African Americans, though we still do produce crops, we have not traditionally grown coffee, but we do grow culture, right? And that culture is a connection to our history in a way to see that coffee not just as a colonial cash crop filled with trauma, but as the seeds of peace. And I want to end with what the brothers in Ethiopia taught me. They taught me a blessing that apparently is over 2,000 years old, and it did not get exported when the Dutch stole coffee in 1660. That blessing is Bunafi Nagea Hindabina. And it means, "May your house lack no coffee nor peace." It's said for the first time when someone receives coffee in your home. They believe coffee is the seeds of peace. It is something given from the Creator to unite us, to bring us together. Unfortunately, that has not been the experience of most African Americans when it comes to this crop, whether we're looking at gentrification, colonization, or slavery when we look at Brazil or in the Caribbean. However, we believe that if we are to make coffee black again is going to require us to reintroduce our culture in a way that's congruent with a future that's better for all of us. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, does anybody feel like he's passionate about that? Yeah, I mean, wow. That's something that you're going to find founders have in common typically is a passion for what they're doing. You could hear it in Donald, you could hear it in Bartholomew, and you're going to hear it in our next speaker as well. Brandon Ellis is with Spatial Grow, and I love what he's doing to bring virtual farms to life to enable that next generation of farmers. You know, we're doing some work at AgLaunch to try to make farming more accessible to folks and enable that, who typically don't have that opportunity. And what we find is that young people, black people, women, veterans, all have a hard time getting started in farming, right? So I love that you're doing this, and I want to have you come on up and tell us all about it. We're going to move some chairs around.
I think I can get that situated. What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? I'm Brandon. I'm the CEO and founder of Spatial Grow. And as you can see, we're gamifying agriculture for young farmers. If y'all have kids or know of kids, it's pretty hard to pull them off of their iPads. So we're trying to work on keeping them on their iPads and learn a little bit about agriculture. So, as you might know, the average age of farmers is around 60, and if you're in good health, you might make it up to 75 before you retire, but we still gotta get the next generation of farmers to, one, think different about how we approach agriculture, but also get them excited about it. And so, a lot of that, though, is due to limited education. In a lot of schools, it's okay, I can yell if I need to. No. Okay.
Don't yell.
There you go, dude. Check. Give me that.
Yeah,
Sure. Check. All right, my next biggest task is getting the microphone back in there.
All right, you're gonna let me break it. All right, watch me go.
The worst case scenario, I'll just hold it.
Yes, I think we can do it. How about that?
Okay, picking back up where we left off. So education is limited for a lot of these students, and a lot of that is due to the fact that they might not have farms on their properties or can't really get hands-on experience. And a lot of that is limited to if they have a greenhouse on premise or they have a community garden, but not everybody really has that. And so a lot of these tools is sort of blocked behind having either a lot of money or knowing the right people to actually get the resources that you need to on your school. And so what we're trying to do is create a pipeline for workforce development, is to get the new next generation of farmers, one, into the classrooms and getting them excited, but once they're in the classrooms, getting them engaged so they know what to do when they go into those greenhouses, when they go to work on your farms, whether that's soil or indoor in a greenhouse or whatever that might be. And then with that, farm automation. And so we don't have to just teach general agriculture. We can teach the technology side of things. We can teach the science side of things. So it's really just merging all those together so that if they do want to get into agriculture, which we hope, they'll know how to automate those things so they can still have parts of their life so they can go and travel, be with their families, whatever it is they want to do, but still keep up their farm and that lifestyle that they're currently living. And then farm planning. So a lot of you, if you've built a farm, have probably drawn out the little diagrams and the little charts trying to set out what you're going to plant this year and how you're going to set things up. Students want to do that too, but we have a few more ways to sort of engage them so they can get the real scope of what they want to do with their vision. Right now, there's about 76 million students between college and up through undergraduate. About 800,000 of those are farm students, which that's 1%. We all have to eat, and so we really got to get that number up. And so our goal in the future, right, is to move that number up to around 8%. And so what we do, we have one solution, which is our virtual classroom. And me personally, when I first started learning farming, I spent plenty of time on YouTube University trying to figure out everything that was needed to know, but it still didn't really give me what I was looking for, like that in-person experience. I think I spent 6 months or so just learning at a farm, asking every question that I possibly could. And I'm not saying YouTube's bad, right? Still use it, but it still doesn't beat being able to go and ask a farmer, hey, what is this? How do I do this? And so that real-time feedback is really what we're trying to do. And so we merge that into a platform where you can sort of still get that curriculum how you want it and when you want it, taking the time that you need to. It's self-paced, so you can pretty much go through it as you like to, but you're also getting that real-world engagement of being able to work in a 3D environment. And so when you're teaching kids how to sow, they can pick up those seeds, they can plant those seeds and then see them grow. And when you're ready, you can harvest them, and you don't even really have to have a farm to do that. But if you do, you have a little bit more opportunity to sort of get a little bit more into the curriculum. Now, we have some outcomes already, so we're partnering with a few schools and a few farms already. And as you can sort of see here, on the top row you see there, on the third picture, that's one of our Amazon racks. And so what we're really doing is we're taking recycled goods that's typically getting sent for scrap metal, and we're converting them into greenhouses or grow tents. And so the students can actually use recycled goods to grow plants in, and then when they get a little further in the semester, they actually get to automate that, and so the students can leave for fall break, the students can leave for spring break, summer break, and their plants are still gonna be there when they get back. And so a lot of this is just teaching the students, how to sow seeds, how to manage that, what an acid and a base is, how to follow the plant life cycle, because again, all of this still goes into it, whether you're doing indoor growing or outdoor growing, but the principles are still the same. Right? You have to keep the plant alive, you have to give it the requirement nutrients, you have to make sure it gets light, and a lot of what we're doing is just making sure that the students get the fundamental principles. Again, if they stay in agriculture, perfect, we get more people in the space. But if not, they still have the STEM skills that they need to go and do anything else that they want to in their lives. And so we're just giving them exposure to agriculture, and we're trying to make it fun. Right? We get it, not everybody's gonna stay in it, but if we can just capture a few of those students, we might be just bringing the next generation of farmers through that. And so you can sort of see here, they have the automation portion down there in the cardboard box. And again, a lot of this stuff isn't very expensive. It's just getting access to the resources to be able to expose these students to it, right? We have 12th graders reading on 4th grade level, so a lot of it, really, it's cool to do agriculture, but you still have to teach the students fundamentals of one, what does nitrogen do and how do I even spell it and say it, right? And it's like, wow, we have a lot more work to do than just getting agriculture in the classroom. We have to get education back in the classroom, and then we can teach agriculture. So, some of our competitive advantages, so we do virtual learning. For a class of 20 and a class of 500, it all works the same for us. We have a mobile app. Some of the students and the teachers want to get a little bit more involved, and they want their students to say, what can I do with data? Getting data in the classroom. And so we have a very easy to use app that students can go and check out their farm, whether they're at home or whether they're in class and want to get real-time updates on it. Permaculture design, so again, back to those drawings that y'all do. You pull out your pen and your paper, and you sit there and try to say, hey Jimmy, I'm gonna send you a picture of this and you let me know how my farm's looking. Well, they can share this in real time in 3D, and just like Google Docs, I can design a farm in real time. And we have farms all over the country. A handful of them are already here in Memphis, but these students get access to real world farms literally wherever they want to. So if they want to go explore what Farm Ray over here is doing or what this other person's doing in Chicago, they don't really have to get on a plane or a train to do that. They just get on the internet. And so we have a modular farm system. And so to those server racks that I was talking about a second ago, those students get to set up how they want that rack to grow. They get to say, I want to measure pH, I want to measure temperature, and basically make real world decisions on what's going on from their mobile app in real time. And they can do that with other students. So the teachers have control over the lessons, what's being shown, and they can also play with their other classmates and things of that sort as well. So, business model, a lot of numbers here, but realistically, we charge for student seats. And so we pretty much go straight to STEM directors and districts. It's about 130 bucks a year for the students, give or take, and that's for each student. And then the hub, which automates everything, is about 300 bucks per year, but you don't have to have a hub for each student. Realistically, you can have 8 to 10 students per hub. And the hub is just a fancy word for the farm controller, just in case you want to see that reference later, just to like upkeep the rack and any other kind of farm thing they want to have in the classroom. So market adoption, a lot of what we're focused on is schools and universities. Again, getting the next generation in, making sure that they have the tools that they need, that if they want to get into agriculture, they can, and they know how to. Farmers, so the farm controller is a very simple controller. A lot of the big guys who have large operations might offer something different, But a lot of what we're focused on are the farmers who do want to give back to their communities, right? There are plenty of small farmers who are trying to fulfill farmers markets, sell at local restaurants, and a lot of them don't have a lot of money up front to invest in these big fancy systems that will do everything they need to, but cost an arm and a leg to actually get. And then restaurants, you want local and fresh produce, where they can just go to the back, snip their microgreens, and they're good and ready to go. Competition, there are a handful of other people in the education simulation space. One of the few, if only, that has agriculture in there. And we tie everything to real world data. So the students work with simulated data, and at the flip of a switch, we can use real data, and they can actually manage and operate a farm from anywhere in the world right there in person, or right there virtually. And again, we have a mobile app, desktop app, web app, and we can also do this in VR so students can literally use their hands to actually plant seeds and all that kind of good stuff. So our team, me, I've been a hydroponic and aquaponic farmer for a few years, but I went to school for computer science and biology, and a few of my friends also do things like machine learning and mobile development, and also are involved in machine learning. From some of the folks that we have here that have been working with us, you can sort of get an idea. People use this for different things. Some of us like to use this for agritourism, because you can literally put your entire farm virtually. So if you want to show somebody that lives in Los Angeles what your farm looks like, you spend 10 minutes, you set it up, you say, hey, go to this website and enter in this code, and you can walk them through your farm right there. And so, moving on, we want to get to about 8,000 students next year. It's going to cost a little bit of money up front, but again, I use that word upfront sparingly, because a lot of that is just infrastructure costs, but once we have that, that number goes way down as far as what we need to actually get to our individual students. And that's it. I appreciate y'all's time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
You know, first rule of teaching anybody anything is to meet them where they are, right? And I love that Brandon's doing that, so thank you so much. And I do want to remind you all, I know you've got questions, so I hope you're jotting them down. And while, once we finish with our last competitor, entrepreneur, we'll have the tally going on, and at that time we'll take questions. How's that sound? Okay? So you will get to ask those questions. But right now I'd like to bring up Danielle Button. I've known Danielle a long time, and she's just been a trooper, like perseverance. All the words that describe an entrepreneur would go with Danielle's name. And she's super passionate about what she does. She's got her daughter involved in it, and I just love it. She's with Jade's Elevation, and she's really producing luxury hemp products from farm to fashion, right? She's been in the business for a bit, and she has most recently had, just this week, I think, even been announced as a winner in the Twindy Accelerator out of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, which is $10,000. So I'm really excited for her for that. That goes a long way with an entrepreneur like this. She's also been able to license her products in Arkansas for the first time. And so she's licensed as a hemp producer and also for medical cannabis. So please join me in welcoming Danielle to tell us more.
Great. Hey y'all. So I want everybody to say hey to Jade. Hey. Jade is my daughter. She's 9 years old, and the reason why I started Jade's Elevation was because I love Jade and I love getting everyone elevated. So it is kind of a coincidence that they went together. So how we kind of got into Jade's Elevation, we wanted to allow people to see the true self through cannabis and other medicinal herbs. We wanted them to understand that you didn't have to go to, per se, your doctor or big pharma to understand that actually 40% of all drugs made in the world come from medicinal herbs. So the plants that you grow, the plants that are on your farm, and the things that we actually experience, I wanted to take it from seed to experience for you guys to understand. So the products, we are a product-driven and a service-driven organization. We make topicals, transdermal patches, beverages, edibles, concentrates. We also do accessories such as hemp fabrics, hemp designs. We are a lifestyle and entertainment on social media, so we inform you about everything that you can do with cannabis, from actually a regenerative crop. You can actually take carbon from the soil, you can repair the soil, you can eat it, you can make fabric from it, you can do feed from it, you can actually do 25,000 things with hemp. The services that we offer, we do farm and site consultations. A lot of times we have farmers that were so excited to take advantage of this crop, but they didn't understand the aspect of processing. One thing that we offer kind of separate from people, we do toll processing. We process with solventless extractions, meaning that we use no solvents. We do everything through heat, pressure, water, and mechanical separation, meaning that I know how to extract cannabis with my hands. So we also offer white labeling services and THC remediation. A lot of time people are unable to sell their products because it is too hot. So when it goes hot, that means that as a farmer, you did not cease the grow in time for it to be at a 0.3 level. So a lot of times we have cannabis plants that are basically remade into a CBD plant. So most of your CBD, high CBD plants are actually medical cannabis plants that they reverse geneticize to get you a lower THC content. So one of the biggest customer / problems that we had was a lot of people that look like me, a lot of people that look like my daughter, a lot of people that are into holistic wellness, they don't understand the powers of actually understanding how to process, what the process component of industrial hemp takes place, and how to incorporate it into their daily life. So in 2020, through all my social media, I just decided to start doing classes. So it was literally in my backyard with my daughter sitting there, and we started inviting people to our farms. So one of the things that we came up with was the Elevated University and the Creation Lab. A lot of times people don't understand the typical growing of the cannabis plant. Everybody wants it to be a cash crop, but sometimes it's not a cash crop. Like I tell everyone, when I come visit your site, either it's fertilizer or it's money. You choose. I can make it either one. So we teach you about extractions. Extractions is a key component that a lot of people don't understand. So everyone grew a gluttony of hemp. Oh my God, I'm gonna sell it. We're gonna take over the world. But you forgot that the processor was your most important aspect, and a lot of people did not take advantage of on-site processing. So a lot of times we had hemp sitting in the back room for 2 and 3 years, waiting for a nice person like me to come pick it up and make end user products. So another step that I wanted to enable people with is the Creation Lab. The Creation Lab allows all the students from the Elevated University to take their idea and actually implement it with different technologies in a licensed facility. The problem about a lot of people in this situation that I'm in, I am usually the only woman, the only minority, the only licensed owner, the only person who has funding in a medical cannabis or a hemp setting. I want to change that. I want you to be prepared to sit at the table, but also be able to make money. I want you to know how to dose. I want you to know how to make end user products, because it's so much of an asset that we as individuals, I'm going to say as a single mother, we don't even get an advantage to be at the table. So making a seat at the table by having the Elevated University and the Creation Lab will allow our farmers to take their products actually to market. We will be able to test it. We'll be able to come up with different creations like nano-emulsification for your beverages. We'll be able to infuse coffees. We'll be able to have our students come and actually learn through virtual teachings that we all can come together and grow from. So what is the Elevated University? The Elevated University is a virtual platform. It has access to all real live resources, one-on-one coaching, and it has free and paid courses. So the courses are put into modules and broken down into 4 sections. So as you advance, you also take in-course tests. So you can also remember, reuse, and recycle the things that you learn. The Creation Lab, we want to increase student opportunities. We want them to have access to people who actually know what they're doing. A lot of times when I had to learn, shout out to New Farmers Academy, I had to learn new farming of cannabis from real world farmers that didn't necessarily understand what I was doing. Love everybody, but it takes a real cannabis grower to understand growing cannabis for cannabinoid production. But it's many varieties, so you have to understand it's hemp for grain, it's hemp for cannabinoids, and it's also hemp for fiber. The Creation Lab will have access to process all of these materials to then bring the farmer who has that biomass that's been sitting there for us to create end user goods using their biomass. So all the time we are looking for ways to create a hub of network for new agribusiness entrepreneurs like myself, like everyone in here, like my daughter. We always want you to be able to grow. Team members, everyone on there is my family, honestly. I'm Danielle. I have a master's in health and human performance. I'm a licensed hemp farmer. I'm a licensed cannabis medical processor. I am also a processor of hemp too. So that part we have covered, but I also wanted to incorporate things that in my community shy away from this situation. My mom, she's a drug and alcohol counselor. We also incorporate the use of medical cannabis and understanding the aspects and research of what we could do for it, use with it. She also worked for the University of Memphis with athletic compliance, so we always have a health and human performance aspect into it. And my brother, he is a food and production manager and also a cannabis chef. He works with me to infuse our products, create our menu, and really bring the experience to life. Our corporate sponsors, of course, Twin Day. Twin Day is a Black Accelerator program located in Nashville, Tennessee, partnering with the Nashville EC. We are a Black business owner through the Accelerator program through Amazon, and we also work with Tennessee State New Farmers Academy, teaching new farmers about hemp production, processing, and other end user products that you can make with it. How will the funds be used? The development of new learning programs is always detrimental to our teaching. Every time I talk to someone, it is always someone new who wants to learn about cannabis and this new creative crop. I always have to tell people that no matter what, growing is not your only extension to coming into the cannabis industry. It is so many aspects that are left out, especially processing. We want to be able to market these to underserved markets. A lot of times, people don't even know about the classes that we have are offered in conjunction with growing, processing, or production of hemp, because it's so stigmatized in our demographics that even if you saw it, you wouldn't really believe that your opportunity is open as it is. Social media sometimes bans us, but I've been getting very creative with the influencer aspect, the teaching aspect, really getting a lot of our people to come for our classes through my social media. So I have about 10,000 followers, and out of those 10,000, I've reached about 7,000 to actually have them come into my class and learn as I teach you about medical cannabis. And an ag-centric organization, because guess what? Everything can be done if you want to farm. You can feed yourself, you can clothe yourself, and you most definitely can make the money that you want to. It is just about getting people that look like us to understand the start of everything. We started with growing, we started with feeding, and even if you understand why hemp became illegal, it was because as slavery ended, it was no one there to char the stalks. African Americans would come in with their machetes and slash the stalk of hemp. So I thought it was cool. So every time I grow, I have my machete and I slash it. So just understanding that everybody doesn't have an opportunity to do this. So being able to do that, and that's my time.
Thank you, Danielle. Let's give the panel another hand. The creditors here. We're going to tabulate results. AJ, I know you are desiring to stay right on time. Do we have 5 minutes?
We do.
Okay, thank you. So our team of farmers and Brandy are going to maybe step out and get their thoughts together. In the meantime, we'll take questions from the audience for the entrepreneurs that are here. Raise your hand if you've got one. Just go ahead and stand up if you don't mind. That way it'll make it really easy.
Yell it out.
Hey, Jay,
I love what you're doing, and we will get in touch. That's not even a question.
It's a promise. It's not a question, it's a promise. All right, other questions?
Anybody else have questions?
In the back?
Way in the back.
And then back, and then right here.
Right hand front.
Can you open up number 1 for me? Good? Good? We good? Hello?
Now we're good.
Now it works. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare anyone. Go ahead, my friend.
My name is Robert Christian. I'm representing Ghana Consulate and the embassy here. And I think I heard about Africa. Most of the things that you just spoke about has many applications in Ghana, where I come from. And I think one of you is going to Ghana. I might have issued his visa for him. But I'm excited to hear your plastics virtual university and also the hemp and all the 4 of you, your presentation. We need real application in Africa, beginning in Ghana. 2 years ago, I came to National Black Growers Conference in Atlanta, and my aim was to get the black growers to come and visit Ghana. And I think they need to use you guys to come and do presentation and take a trip with them and go and show them that the world is one. And actually, our success is America's success. So black growers, team with these young people, come to Ghana, explore Africa, and next year or down the line, you can have your conference in the capital city of Accra.
All right, who wants to go to Africa?
I love that invitation.
All right. Y'all meet Robert at the end of the show, okay?
Sir, I'm going to Ghana in 2 weeks, so we got to talk. That's crazy.
Where's our next question, Margaret?
Right here. Yes.
For the students, what age group are you targeting for the students?
Can't hear you.
What age group are you targeting for your students?
At the moment, we're working with middle and high school right now.
Yep. That's what you're like.
The answer, I'm sorry, the answer was middle and high school? Who's next?
So this is a question for all of you. I mean, you can all answer this one. So how are you going to work with like big companies to get out to like underprivileged communities to get your technology and your ideas out there?
Who is that to?
Is that to everyone?
Yes, that's to everyone.
Everybody, okay.
Okay, I can go first. I guess so. For us, we use media to bring information to the youth, specifically in underserved communities. So we've accrued about 1 million streams across streaming platforms. We do kind of like, it's not educational rap, but it's rap that's from a perspective, kind of an Afrofuturistic perspective. We just recently synced the deal with HBO Max to produce a pilot episode that gets greenlit. Then a lot of the information that we do will be baked into that sitcom. We also created a documentary. We've been able to tour that in Rwanda, Ethiopia, played it for the Prime Minister's brother in Ethiopia, as well as all across the United States. And then through social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, we have around 50,000 followers combined. And so that's also another avenue to introduce what we do to the youth.
One more question. Go ahead. Somebody else has one answer up there?
Yeah.
Dr. White?
Yeah, I think it was for all of us, right? Yeah, okay, so, I don't know if my mic is working.
Take it.
All right. So a couple of things. We have an educational component because we got to have an educational component. I've personally written a children's book geared towards kids. You know, it's a true K through 12 through experimentation. It's called You're a Chemist Too. So from 7th through 12th grade really is the target audience. But through experimentation, we actually teach chemistry and different types of things that they can use for chemistry around the house, right? But we also do science on Saturdays, and we go into the community. So I've worked with cooperative extensions, the USDA, through Tuskegee University, USDA liaison. And so we've done a myriad of different programs going into urban farming and urban forestry as well. So yeah, all through chemical education. Yeah.
I'm getting the high sign that we're gonna have to wrap up, but let's give these folks a chance to answer that question. She's finishing tallying, and we should be good.
I'll be real fast. Right now, the server racks that I was talking about were actually donated to us by Amazon, and they have about 20,000 or so of those that they scrap each year for metal. And we're actually partnered with somebody on their sustainability committee. So we have 70 racks in Whitehaven right now, and they tried to give us 1,000 of them. And so a lot of that is just making those kind of partnerships with other cloud providers, your big companies like Google, Microsoft, pretty much anybody that you probably go online and go to their websites and have server racks. And they pretty much go through those each year, tens of thousands of them. So a lot of it is just going to them, because they all have initiatives by 2030, 2040 to go zero waste, so they have to find somewhere for it. So a lot of what we're offering is just a solution to say, hey, if you're gonna put them in scrap anyways, donate them to us. We can put them in these communities, teach people how to grow in them, and then they get that community good as well as our side of things.
I'm sorry, I was dealing with my daughter and I missed that question. So I'm actually gonna skip it and pass it over. Did we answer it?
We all answered.
We have time for one last question. Last question.
Thank you. This goes for you two in terms of like the technology that you're currently doing. What type of Black VCs have y'all worked with? I mean, there's some outlets like Afrotech, Harlem Capital that can actually provide you some of the funding that you would need to get your ideas out there and actually support your initiatives that you're working on. And lastly, this is an example for like the generation that talks about the youth and the ideas that they're doing. This is a perfect example of how we can pull our resources and invest in some of these initiatives that these young Black talent are doing. And I think that this can help us out in terms of what we want to try to accomplish primarily with crop and agriculture, agri-science technology. So if they don't get, we need to figure out a way to provide funding for these type of initiatives. And I know from my institution, we're gonna work on doing it, but this is a perfect example of innovation at its finest. So I just want to thank you for coming out here and showing your talent and showing what you can bring to the table, especially for the next generation. Thank you.
All right, Margaret, what's next? How will we know the winner?
Well, we are very close. Brandy, how's it coming?
Okay.
Maybe one more question.
I had a comment. Somebody asked what other ways can we educate people? So we have a space in the community in North Memphis where we live called the Anti-Gentrification Coffee Club, which is a very long name, but we thought it was funny. So we just call it the Coffee Club, but we do free coffee education in our community. We went through our first internship program called the SIP program, Specialist in Training. It's created by my wife. We trained 6 youth coffee education, the colonial history of coffee, ways to create their own products, apparel, social media training, and that first class has graduated. So we're accepting applicants for the second class of that if you're interested. It kind of functions as a coffee shop and a community living room. And if you're in town on Saturday, we're doing an Ethiopian coffee roasting ceremony there. We're calling it the Coffee Black Bazaar, and we'd love to have y'all come out.
Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, these panelists